It has been a while, but we are here for a Middle-earth Monday. That is right, we are here with new Lord of the Rings content. Games Workshop very kindly sent me out some of the new kits they showed off last week. And the one I'm going to be tackling today is Beechbone the Ent. Like I said previously, I love painting Lord of the Rings miniatures and I wish I could dedicate a video to it every single week. But currently, that focus is going to Old World Wednesdays. If I got lots of views on both, I would be more than happy to make a video for each every single week. But unfortunately, that is not the reality of this content. So if you guys do want to see me making more Lord of the Rings content, you got to blow up these videos. You got to make sure you're liking, commenting, making sure you subscribe, sharing these videos around. If they do get big views, like I said, I will dive in and do more Lord of the Rings content. I'd be more than happy to do a Lord of the Rings video every single week if that was feasible. But that's all down to you guys. Okay, without further ado, let's dive in and get this awesome new Beechbone Ent painted very quickly with a very small number of paints. So let's do it. Okay, so this is the Beechbone the Ent. He is an epic miniature. Now, obviously, Ents were one of my favorite things in the Lord of the Rings movies. It's a very incredible scene when Merry and Pippin finally decide to convince the Ents to march to war. He gives out that bellow, that war cry, Treebeard does, and all the Ents start marching out to assault Saruman in his tower. It's iconic. It's a very cool battle. It's very different than any other fights that exist inside the Lord of the Rings IP. And as an army, they're comparable to, say, like knights in Warhammer 40,000. You would only have maybe 3 or 4 of these things on the table. And it's an incredibly difficult uphill fight for anyone who's trying to fight Ents. They're so difficult to get through, take down all those wounds, kill, and they will just stomp and smash their way through your whole armies. They're incredibly dangerous. The plastic Ent that we did get is an okay kit, not amazing. The bunch of resin ones that have recently come out from, well, Forge Worlds, no Forge Worlds don't exist anymore, but Games Workshop, I think are incredible. They're amazing. This is the first resin one that I have. I do need to get the new plastic Treebeard, and then those other two, Quick Beam and Beechbone, I think are all the named ones, and I just need them all. It'd be so cool to have that collection of Ents to march around and have fights with. So as you can see, I'm going for a very quick, and I mean a very quick paint job on this guy, and I promise you he's going to look fantastic by the end of it, even though you only need a couple of paints. So you sprayed black and then sprayed light grey, like a Zenithal. I used Chaos Black and Grey Seer for my particular one here. And then the next thing I did is I grabbed Skeleton Horde and I painted the entire tree in Skeleton Horde, including the leaves. I was trying to miss the leaves originally, but I just think the nice kind of bony color will act as a perfect starting point for the green contrast I'm going to put on that later on. I then threw some AK Interactive texture paint, the dark earth stuff, onto his base, building it up around those rocks that he's stepping over, making the kind of the Ent and the rocks and everything blend together into the scenic base, making it look like the bottom of Fangorn Forest, which is of course very old. I love how the Skeleton Horde dried on him, because obviously he is that kind of ashy, like bone color, if you will. So more gassed bone was then brought in, and I dry brushed up all of the wood with this. Even the leaves everywhere got dry brushed with that more gassed bone color. And as you can see, even just that simple dry brush across this miniature is making a huge difference. Like a contrast on a dry brush and you get this kind of texture and this kind of result. And certain models can't just get away with that result, and it's amazing. When you can do it, it's awesome. So I'm going to continue doing this across the entire Ent until we get that nice solid coat, that nice dry brush across everything. We are going to push the kind of bark just one step further. I went to try and find my Shabty Bone or my Skeleton Horde, and not my Skeleton Horde, my Shabty Bone or Screaming Skull. Couldn't find either of them, don't know where they're gone, driving me insane. So I did just rummage around and find my Vampire Fang from Two Thin Coats. You can obviously use any bone from Games Workshop, any of the lighter ones for this last dry brush if you are copying along. I'm just grabbing a bone from the Two Thin Coats range and going over with exactly the same kind of dry brush as I just did, just going lighter. Just taking my time, catching those really sharp edges, making sure to get the detail around his face, make sure his nose is there. Tops of the hands, knuckles, all those kind of bits and pieces. Give the idea of like light coming down. And that's the bark color on. We're going to be doing a little bit like weathering on the bark in a minute, which is going to look really cool. But as for that ashy color, the bark is done. Basilicanum Grey is usually my go-to for stones and rock. I like to block in all of those with that color. You can do something brighter if you want to start with Dawnstone. But I quite like dark rocks. And then obviously I then decide to dry brush up all of the texture paste that we put on the base. So I usually go with Ryza Rust, and then I go back to that bone color and do a light dry brush that over the top of that again. I find it works really well. It gives you a really natural earthy tone. And because we're hitting the rocks with that, it just looks like really old stone, which is what you find in forests. If you walk through a forest and you find a big boulder or a stone, it's not grey, it's not pristine and clean, it's brown. It's covered in dirt and soil and moss and all that kind of grossness. So it's okay that it blends in. You can still see the stones are there. But I think it sits a little bit better. People often wonder about my orange added into my base. It adds that kind of warmth to the soil. Lots of rich kind of like, I don't know. It's just awesome. It just looks really cool. Instead of just being that flat, dead, grey, brown color, which just isn't for me. And of course, to finish off the base, we are of course going to add a very careful black rim around the edges, make it nice and tidy. A lot of people go with kind of like a beige rim for Lord of the Rings miniatures. I've always been a fan of models looking like they're on plinths, so I like the black. You can of course do whatever you like. From here, I'm going to work on the leaves. Now, originally when I was painting this guy, I was like, okay, I'll base coat them with Plague Bearer flesh, and then I'll highlight them up and make them brighter. I didn't highlight them. I got to the point where all the Plague Bearer flesh had dried and the leaves just look really natural and really nice. And it was then that my brain started to understand that, you know, Lord of the Rings miniatures are not like Warhammer 40,000 miniatures or Age of Sigmar models. They're supposed to kind of be a little bit more natural, not as extreme, you know, not heroic scale models, not pushing the colors to the nth degree, not vibrant. It's supposed to look like a tree, like all the Ents did in the movie. And Plague Bearer flesh, I think, just gave the perfect green pallid color. It didn't overpower the kind of the bark, which was a worry, and it looked really cool. So I got some lead belcher. There is a few bits of detritus on his base that were left from the last Uruk-hai that he smushed. So one of their cleavers and an Uruk-hai shield is on his base. I just hit them with a little bit of lead belcher here. The reason I waited till the end is because those are new items dropped on the floor, so they're not going to have that dry brush of mud and dirt and stuff. They want to be a little bit more pristine and stuff like that, so that's why I decided to do them now. And it's really starting to come together now. I love it. So, moss is, of course, one of my favorite things. This is the Dirty Down range. They've got a couple of different versions. They've got Rust, Verdigris, and Moss. I think they've got some new ones as well that I haven't really paid attention to yet, Yellow Rust and stuff. But the Moss is another one that's just incredible. If you shake the ever-loving hell out of the bottle before you use it, make sure that the ball gets activated inside and you hear it rattling around for a good few minutes. And then you can just paint that into all the recesses and cracks and crannies and stuff like that. Like, if you remember, like, the line in the movie where they describe what Fangorn Forest is and they talk about it's very old, like very, very old. Which means these trees are going to be covered in moss and vines and all that kind of stuff. I don't like it being this, like, pure birch tree marching. I don't think that makes sense at all. So anywhere where there's a fold or a crease in the wood, especially down around his feet, I used that moss effect and I painted it in. I made sure to get all those rocks, all the cracks and all the crevices on those rocks and boulders got done with it as well. And this just added a real big kind of pop of green once again flowing through the entire miniature. The boulder in his hand, I put some moss on that as well. And I think it really did push it to the kind of the next level. That's quite a dull beige looking model. It looks kind of awesome. After that, we just did a few simple techniques. We painted the eyes. I did a solid coat of white and did some black pupils. I gave it a little bit of black wash after that to dull it down and give it a little bit of kind of black in the recesses. I make it kind of suit the tone of the model a little bit better. And with that, we have our finished Beechbone the Ent miniature. I think he looks incredible, and I think we used maybe 5 or 6 paints in total to get this guy from grey resin to a fully painted miniature that you could slap down on your Games of Middle-earth and fight straight away. Like I said at the beginning of this video, guys, if you really like the content, the Lord of the Rings content, make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Think about supporting via Patreon or channel membership, and check out all those other affiliate links and stuff down below. Help support the channel, and of course encourages me to make more Lord of the Rings videos moving forward. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you in the next one.